Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now? We're back for the flagship podcast here on the channel for the first time in the 24-25 season, and we're at the sharp end of the transfer window, and this is when Celtic sadly get picked apart and maybe come to life all at the same time. It seems to be the period of the transfer window where we do all of our business. I am Quinny, of course, and I'm joined by Josh. Josh, good to see you, my man. Hail, hail.
Good to see you. Good to be back. It's obviously been quite a long summer. Obviously, Euros were on. Good to see Spain beat England in the final. So, no, it's been a good one. And hopefully, get back into some Celtic stuff today.
Yeah, well, there's plenty going on. You know, normally when we're getting together for the podcast, we've got a bit of post-match, bit of pre-match, and then maybe just some of the drama and some of the headlines in between. But even though, again, we're between a post and a pre-match, still all the same. The agenda is firmly chock-a-block with transfer rumours, incomings, outgoings, maybe a bit as well. Yeah. But I think like over the last week or two, the main thing, it started off in a kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say a high, Josh, but definitely something I felt was a split transfer in terms of Adam Idah. We're all happy to see him come back, but it was a lot of money that we spent. Yeah. And my kind of main worry was like, that's maybe taking resources away from the left back recruitment, from the other pieces of business we still had to be done. And, you know, we're still yet to see how the business will develop and if that will be the case or not. Yeah. So, yeah, we have Adam Idah back in the building. And quickly off the heels of that, we got Atalanta find someone else to play midfield for them, which is great. And then as soon as you get excited about that, it feels like Brighton, similar to us with Idah, they're prepared to pay any cost to get Matt O'Riley down at the South Coast. So it's battle stations at Parkhead, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. Happy to see Idah Bernardo both come in the door on a permanent basis, and the business is Schmeichel and Sinisalo looks good so far. So happy with that. O'Riley, I think there's been a sense of inevitability throughout the summer that something was eventually going to prop up, and towards the end of the window, even down south, I don't think a lot of business has been done this summer, and maybe things are going to ramp up in the next 10 days or so. So yeah, it doesn't come as much as a surprise. I was, like you said, happy to see Atalanta pull out of the race and opt for a cheaper option, but Brighton coming in now, it's just a matter of time before this one happens, isn't it? I read a report last night that said he could even make his debut against Man United this weekend. So it'd be interesting. That was in the Sun, to be fair, so I don't know whether I believe that or not. But yeah, I think Brighton's a really good move for Matt O'Riley. They're a really good, well-run football club. They're, in terms of being run as a club, they're everything Celtic should aspire to be. And says a lot that they're looking to get O'Riley in to replace somewhat Billy Gilmore, and they're not letting him go until they get O'Riley in. Perhaps that's what Celtic should be doing in signing a Matt O'Riley replacement, but it doesn't look like what it's going to happen. The fee is, well, what I've read, is just above 25 million in that sort of ballpark. Could they have got more? Probably, but at the end of the day, this is what it is. The board are going to take, if anything, I think above 25 million was going to get him and force them into a sale. And fair play to O'Riley, he's been brilliant last season, and so far this year he's conducted himself in a brilliant professional manner. Footballers these days that have a manner and act in a sort of manner that he does are very hard to come by. So fair play to him for being level-headed and still performing on the park for Celtic in the first couple of games of this season. But he deserves the move down south. Sensational last campaign, and it's no surprise that it's a club like Brighton who are interested. I watched the highlights of their game against Everton at the weekend when they won 3-0, and I think O'Riley would slot nicely into that team. Obviously, they've got the young, progressive German manager, so I think they'll do well this season, and it's a good move for them.
Yeah, it's one of those ones you hate to see him leave, kind of thing, but you do wish him all the best. And I think, like, I've heard the Billy Gilmore stuff. I know they're trying to ship him off to Napoli and whatever, but for me, Matt O'Riley's much more of a Pascal Gross replacement. Pascal Gross last year for Brighton's a bit much more of an O'Riley figure physically, and he took like every set piece for them. And as Celtic fans know, Matt O'Riley loves to swing a corner and doesn't mind standing over a free kick. And again, with that physical kind of presence that he offers in midfield alongside the legs that Brighton have in their team, like, I think he goes there as primary playmaker. And like Brighton, like you say, the main thing for us as Celtic fans to be interested in is Brighton are the apex predator when it comes to the jungle of the springboard clubs around European football. Like, if you want to sell, if you're an agent and you've got a player you want to sell for 100 million, you get him to Brighton, you know, and Brighton will sell that. They'll sell that guy for 80 million, 100 million, no problem at all to anyone and that might come calling. And as long as we get a good deal, we make sure we get our little clauses and fees and add-ons and all the rest of it into the back end of it. It's going to be a wildly profitable move for Celtic, no two ways about it. But we would much rather keep him. And I think like with some of the rumours we've had sloshing around already, and again, I think a bit of this sentiment came out when Bernardo came back, is are we going to be stronger this year? And with O'Riley leaving, that surely goes right out the window. You've got to think.
I think it depends on when O'Riley goes, who comes in the door, and what Celtic do in the next 9 days. Obviously, you can say that they're going to be weaker if O'Riley goes, but if they replace him and then they add to other areas of the squad that weren't strengthened last summer, such as left back, perhaps looking at bringing another centre back, then you could argue Celtic are in a stronger place. But at the minute, for me, when O'Riley goes, they'll definitely be weaker. It's just about bringing players in to ensure that is not the case. And with a manager like Brendan Rodgers at the helm, Celtic should be striving to build on positions of strength each season. And for me, as the seasons go by, I don't feel as though they do that. Look, when Ange Postecoglou left after Celtic won a treble and had a sensational season, they didn't build on a position of strength there. And so far, it doesn't really look like they're building on a position of strength after winning a double. The squad is in a similar nick to what it was last season. When O'Riley goes, the quality is just going to go down. So yeah, I think we'll just have to wait and see and make that judgment of the quality and if the squad's going to be stronger at the end of the transfer window. But at the minute, it's just the same. And when O'Riley goes, it will go down. But will they replace him? It remains to be seen.
Well, that's going to be a tough one. I sincerely hope it's not Paulo Bernardo, unless Paulo Bernardo has this latent potential that we've not even had a glimpse of yet, and he can really, grab the reins on this one and really level up on what we've seen last year. Because Bernardo last year is fine, right? But he's not a guy that you can just go, oh yeah, he'll play instead of O'Riley, and we won't miss a beat. It'll be the exact same as before. Far from it, I think. Yeah,
thinking Paulo Bernardo as the O'Riley replacement would be insanity from Celtic. He's not even that much of a similar player. I think Bernardo's more suited to the Hatate role in the team instead of the O'Riley role, more of a deeper, deep line creating midfielder rather than being O'Riley. But listen, getting him in permanently was a big coup. He's only going to improve, still 22 years of age, but can he take that burden off O'Riley straight away? I don't think so.
No, I'm uncertain about that as well. And I've kind of long maintained, whoever did leave the midfield next, whether it be Hatate or O'Riley, that maybe the move, just for the immediate term, let's see how the business does shake out, is that Kalmak moves up and takes that kind of void and then yell out Iwata into the team. Because really, when you look at the midfield, I love the midfield three we've had. There was a great post that went out on Twitter a few weeks ago or whatever, but is this the best midfield three since Lambert, Lennon, Petrov? And I think that is probably a great shout and it's hard to argue with. But the thing that midfield is missing is a defensive midfielder. And that's when it comes to European football, really what we're lacking. If you look at the Scotland performances, McGregor, and for us for Champions League, he's not a defensive mid. Like he's just not. Yes, he could be that metronome for Rodgers, that controller player domestically for us. But his main skills is passing and high energy, reading the game. And we see him when he gets into the final third, he knows where the back of the net is. He knows what runs and what positions to make. So I would hope that's maybe plan. I don't want to say plan A. Plan A should be a replacement, but like the default, let's say the new default post O'Riley till somebody else comes in, is maybe we see like Iwata come into the fold and we get. The only problem I have with that midfield is they're all tiny,
it's not a physically appealing midfield, is it? And that's something you need, especially in Europe. Brendan Rodgers spoke about it last week in his press conference that the two main attributes he wants in signings to help Celtic progress in European competition is speed and power. So I think that's what you'll see in terms of incomings, the two key attributes a lot of them will have. Tomoki Iwata wasn't in the squad at the weekend. He was in the squad for the first two games, but wasn't in the squad at the weekend, not even on the bench. No talk of an injury, no talk of him missing training. Maybe he's just been left out of the squad because the manager didn't really need him for a cup tie. But
picking names out of a hat for that, isn't it?
Perhaps that's why young Francis Turley got on the bench, maybe. But something to keep an eye on there, see if he's in the squad at the weekend against St Mirren. But yeah, I feel like we're always having this debate kind of having a defensive midfielder and someone who's a bit physical, bit of a destroyer, if you will. I remember thinking it was going to be Oliver Abildgaard when he came in the door, then eventually only made like 2-3 appearances. Thinking it might have been Quan last season, now he's on loan at Hibs. So I don't know, given the links we've had in the transfer market so far, I don't think a defensive midfielder is quite high up on the agenda, but I would like to see perhaps in Europe. Well, first of all, I'd like to see in Europe a midfielder for Hatate, McGregor and O'Riley get a real crack at it, but I don't think that's going to happen. So putting Tomoki Iwata into the team for those games would be quite good. I think he's a solid, reliable option. The way he relieves pressure, he can get through it pretty well, and I really like him as an option. I know some people that don't rate him, but I do. I think he's a steady operator in the middle of the park. So he's not a name we've seen banded about often. He's rarely played, obviously, in the league so far in domestic scene, but hopefully he maybe comes into the fore more when O'Riley departs. But yeah, it'll be interesting, very interesting to see what happens there.
And I know we've been very much talking like it's the case. It does feel like it's a when O'Riley leaves, but there's still a little 5% of me that's not giving up, the ghost, because Champions League play with Hatate and McGregor in the Champions League, Parkhead for 4 games at home. Like, you know,
it would be brilliant.
I'll call you up in January.
Yeah, I know, exactly. We didn't really get to see that midfield three get a real crack at it in the Champions League. Even in Ange Postecoglou's second season, when O'Riley came in, never really got to see that trio get a crack at it. It would be through injury, suspension. I remember Paulo Bernardo played a lot of games in the Champions League last year. Due to Hatate being out, McGregor was out for some of it. Iwata was coming into the team. So, yeah, I would love to see that midfield get a crack at it, especially against some of the lower teams in the Champions League that Celtic would be looking at to get their points at home, and see that midfield really set it alight in those types of games. But unfortunately, unless Quinny's 5% comes through, I don't think we're going to see that, unfortunately.
No, I think that'll be the sad case of it. And like we kind of tipped off this kind of little section on, like, the question is, will we be stronger by the end of the window? And like, we've had some guys move out, like Quan's away, and Murray's away, and a few other bits and pieces, Lawal, whatever. But this is how we're sitting today, right now, before anything else happens. And let's see, if we take this man out of the picture, like, this is threadbare, isn't it?
Yeah, it is indeed, isn't it? Odin Home, you've got questions over him even. Whether he's good enough to make the step up. So yeah, I completely understand the manager's comments about bringing in even one midfielder, even if O'Riley stays, and then another one if it goes as well. So I think that's something you will probably see. But yeah, I mean, that midfield, when you take it O'Riley, it does look a bit threadbare. Even, I would argue, the wings look a bit lacking in quality. Yang not convinced by, Luis Palma not convinced by, Mikey Johnston is an enigma. So, I mean, even those 3 guys out in the left there, I think you could be looking at a winger as well. So, there is when you look at the squad actually on paper, when it's like this, that's when you actually begin to realise the amount of work that needs done in 9 days, and whether this squad is actually going to be strengthened from last season.
Yeah, it certainly seems like a tall order based on the pace that we've been doing. We've been linked quite vehemently to Arne Engels of Augsburg, which could be a good move. I would say on that note, by the way, there's an Augsburg midfielder that I like a lot better called Nicholas Dorsch, who looked like he was on his way to Anderlecht. And I would much rather prefer, he's tiny but as well, which is a bit of a problem. Arne Engels is 6 foot, so maybe he's going to get in over that. But I'm a big fan of Dorsch. I would love to see us get him in general, if he can stay fit. But the other midfielder we've been linked to that, I don't know much about, and normally that gets me worried. And before I'm talking about signings like Lager, BLK, I'm talking about guys like Naroki, Palma. Normally when we're signing guys, I've not got a Scooby-Doo who they are. It's not really worked out so far. So is Alvin Sanchez of Lausanne Sport and Swiss Super League. Now, the Swiss Super League, I will caveat this by saying, is they have unearthed some talent over the last couple of years. In this window in particular, I think they've had 3 or 4 players leave for decent fees to quite decent leagues and teams and whatever. So I'm not going to totally write this one off just yet, but you were telling me, Josh, before we came on, that's a move that is ready to be.
The report I read in the Daily Express was along those lines. It was basically saying that the Celtic recruitment team have been scouting this guy for the past 18 months and that he is keen on the move. And Lausanne, the team he plays for, have lessened their asking price from 4 million down to 3 million. And the Celtic have convinced Sanchez that the best place for his development is in Glasgow to play with Celtic in the Scottish Premiership and the Champions League. So I think that's one to keep an eye on. I'd never really heard of him either. To be honest, I've not really seen much of him. But a Switzerland under-21 international nonetheless. Highly rated in Switzerland from what I've read. So could be an interesting one if it's over the line. And the report I read as well says that Brendan Rodgers seems to rate him quite highly. So it would be interesting if that got over the line, as well as a couple more players that have been linked. Put it this way, if you were to offer me one of Arne Engels or Alvin Sanchez, I think I'm taking Arne Engels.
Interesting. Yeah, I like players that have got experience in the top leagues for sure. To come into the squad. Alvin Sanchez, when I did my kind of little recce on him, he's like 6 foot as well, plays attacking midfielder or up front, so again, he probably ticks a lot of those boxes of raw potential, and you just need to craft him into a bit of a better player. So
yeah, I think out of those two, Engels and Sanchez is the cheaper option, and I think it's the more likely one to happen.
Yeah, and that would kind of paint into my Adamida concerns that we've spent a wee bit more on him than we budgeted for. And regardless of any Matt O'Riley windfall lottery ticket transfer that we get again, it's probably not going to change the transfer kitty too much, sadly. So that is a worry and a concern of mine, 100%. But we did get linked to someone. We had one incredible link that I don't think a lot of people can quite bring themselves to believe yet. And we had a really good link for an incoming that I would be quite excited and quite happy for. I think the best place to start with this would be Kyogo has been linked. It was some sort of scout or some sort of an ITK account was on a Twitch stream somewhere, and they had said Man City have got a list, and I'll try and find the original tweet, but it basically describes Kyogo without saying his name.
So it was I watched the stream last night when I was a bit in bed about to go to sleep. It was an hour long. And it was Sam Lee of The Athletic. He's The Athletic's Manchester City correspondent, so I would say he's quite a reliable source. And I've got the quotes written up here. He said Man City looking for a backup striker, and by quote he says, in terms of the play style of this one guy, fairly small, penalty box finisher, doesn't do loads of link-up play, but when he does, he's quite tidy. It's more slick outside the box than Haaland. And going by his profile, the league he plays in, that kind of thing, we're not talking about a big name player. Once Gundogan is done, they'll ramp that up. Now, today, obviously, Sam Lee then came out this morning and reported Kyogo's name in the report. Fabrizio Romano's reporting it, and Gundogan has got the here we go, or there we land, whatever they're calling it nowadays, to go to Man City, and he's going to sign for them in return. So they will probably turn their attention to the striker. The report is that Kyogo and there's one other young striker they've got on the list. So that's the two, and they're going to decide between the two. So it'll just be interesting to see if they go for him, because it would be a great move for Kyogo.
I think it would. I think it would fit the Erling Haaland cover position pretty well. And Josh, you've definitely not heard me say this before, right? But you've got a great example of it, opening game of the season. I think it was maybe even for the first goal. But I would sell Kyogo, no problem at all, to Man City today, tomorrow, next week, or whatever. I love the wee guy. He's been brilliant for us. But he's got that little selfish git streak in him where he just won't put it on a plate for someone else to tap in. He likes to shoot from 18 yards. And I think it's the first goal. I'm sure it was the first goal of the season where he's through on goal. He could lay it off for Kuhn, but he doesn't. He shoots, and then the ball comes to Forrest and he squares it for Kuhn, or comes to Kuhn and he squares it for Forrest, however the first goal went. I forget it all exactly right now. So there's a wee example of that in the first match. But I would happily replace him with Maeda in that position. And I think we've seen in the Cup at the weekend how much Maeda can just walk into those shoes. We do have Adamida, of course, so you can play Ida and Maeda on the left, of course. But if you wanted that Kyogo presence through the middle, we have Maeda. Maeda is a way better teammate for me than Kyogo. Maeda will play those passes on a plate for someone else, to have the tap in. So I would, at 30 years of age, refusing to get shoulder surgery and all the rest of it, I would sell him. No problem. I wouldn't think twice.
I think if Celtic, if the fee is right, I think Celtic will sell. From a business perspective, if they got circa between even 12 and the 17 mark, anything within there, I think it'd be good business for a 29-year-old striker who didn't hit the heights expected of him last season, who always kind of has wee injury niggles. He's got an ongoing an ongoing problem with his shoulder. Sorry, that he needs surgery on, and to get him out for within that price range, I think it'd be good business, and they can hopefully reinvest that into another player. My thinking is that if you're using then Maeda and Ida as the two strikers, you need to bring in a left winger then to supplement Maeda not playing out there more, because Palma and Yang are not up to the task. So
Yep.
it depends who they'd go for there. I've not seen any links. The only left winger link we've had, I think, is Michelangelo Balikwisha from Standard Liège. That's gone quiet over the past couple of weeks. So yeah, I wouldn't be against that either, to be honest, using Maeda and Ida. Maeda really impressed me up front on Sunday against Hibs. So, and as Brendan Rodgers said post-match, he really talked him up in the striker role, which was quite interesting to me. He's never really done that before about Maeda, but he went on Premier Sports after the game and said, played there before for me against Yokohama in a friendly, scored a hat-trick. He's played there for Japan in the World Cup. So talking that up, and then the Kyogo interest comes out is something to note, I feel. But let's just see what the next couple of days holds regarding that. And obviously the Bogusz links, he could perhaps play striker as well if he comes in the door. But I'm sure we'll get onto that soon.
Yeah, I was just going to mention Bogusz, because as soon as you take Kyogo out of this, like again, like from O'Riley going, if Kyogo was to go,
grim.
come on, man. Come on, man. We've got Champions League to play, Celtic. What are you doing to us, man?
I know. Oh, it's brutal.
Yeah, but big Matthias Bogusz, bit of a Polish superstar over in LA for LAFC in the MLS for the last, I think he's been there for about 2 seasons or so. This is a guy, I must confess, I don't watch much LA, if much MLS these days. Last season, I didn't tune in as much as I normally do. But LA certainly are one of the teams that are always scoring buckets of goals. They've got really exciting players and teams. And on a little side note, Hugo Lloris has got 2 assists in the last 3 games.
I've seen that.
So like, they are like a super dominant team, which is the sort of teams we want to be buying from, because that's the environment that we are asking them to fulfill. You know, I know there's a lot of value in this sort of model. We've seen it before with Celtic, with Rodgers. I forget who's is jumping to mind at the moment, but certainly with Ange, with some of the Korean lads that he's brought in, there's definitely good value in the players that have been in the doldrums and had to fight against relegation and had their backs to the wall, and you know, it's people's livelihood on the line. It's do or die. Got to get the win. Got to get the points. But equally, there's a lot of value in the absolute opposite end of that table, getting over the line, winning the medal, winning the title, etc. And Big Bogusz has been playing in the front line of a front three, can kind of play all over it, to be honest with you, alongside the likes of Denny Bouanga. Carlos Vela was formerly at the team. Kai Kamara is in the last lineup I'm looking at the moment. And this is a guy that I think, Christian Oliveira as well, who either comes in to replace Kyogo out and out in terms of that position. You can keep Maeda then as your left winger, and you're rotating between your Bogusz and your Ida. But I would think, given the pedigree of, or you know, what Bogusz does, like he could be the O'Riley replacement, the guy that goes into midfield, because O'Riley has been very often seen multiple times in his Celtic career. Like, he's not actually, if we can put him back on the board here quickly, he's not actually in this spot. He's actually much more of like a De Bruyne, where he's that attacking midfielder that just stays in this channel and will pick up the spaces, will support the striker in the press. And Big Bogusz could do that for us.
Yeah, he's a versatile player. Quite excited by that link, actually. I'd never heard the guy's name before I seen it, but after doing some reading up this morning, certainly looks like a talented football player. Still only 22 years of age, so he has that room for improvement, and he's already playing pretty well out in the MLS, so that's encouraging. Like you say, versatile, able to play out in the wing, can play striker, and I think it's a good sign that we're having a conversation over whether he's going to replace Kyogo or O'Riley, because that shows how good and how versatile and worth he can be. The report I read this morning was that the fees between 8 to 10 million euros if it's going to be agreed, which is just decent to have the money in the bank. So he's going to be called up for Poland as well for the Nations League coming up in September. I think it would be a really good signing, a shrewd signing from Celtic, and one that I would be greatly excited by, and I think fans should be. Even clips I've watched him as well, it looks really good and can hit a nice shot from range. decent free kick taker, can link the play well. He's really good on the half turn in the middle of the park. So yeah, I'd be happy if Celtic brought him in. Obviously, the last Polish player we had is Mike Nawrocki. He's not doing too well at the minute. Patrick Klimala before him. So hopefully Bogusz can live up to the Arthur Boric of Polish Celtic players.
Aye, he's definitely got a bit more the Boruc is about him, like
Yeah.
he's a big game player, and he's used to playing in high scoring teams and being at the top end of tables. And think what you will of MLS. Like if you watch it or not, anyone out there, fine. It's not a great league. They do have very good footballers, and like to win that division, like it is a marathon and a half. Like the travel and even the fixture, like commitment is incredible. Like some teams like LA, for example, they might get like 4 games away on the road, and it's like East Coast at New York, and then into the mountains, and then down to Florida and whatever. Like you're changing altitude, you're changing time zones. Like you're playing 2 games, 3 games in a week. So like it does take like proper metal to be at the top of that division and be a decent player. And since Alistair Johnson's came in, I'm surprised we've not tapped into MLS a bit more, because there is plenty of like really good players in there that if you can't spend 10 million quid, you can get a guy that can turn around really quickly. One of my favorite players to come out of MLS over the last couple of years is Castellanos, who was at New York City. He went to Girona. He's now at Lazio, and he's just been called into the Argentina squad. So like, and you get little success stories like that come out. Almiron, obviously, at Newcastle. There are players that play there. And if you can make use out of one of them, you could spend the fee to bring them in, then it's a great market to tap into, I think. Because, again, one of the pet peeves I've really got, I've heard so many Celtic podcasts say this, so I'm not isolating anyone here, right? I listen to as many podcasts as I can just because I love this stuff. But see, when I hear people saying that nobody wants to come to Scotland, I want to pull my hair out. Like, it's 2024. See, now, professional players value medals, they value minutes, and they value, like, being in the shop window. And
look at
like,
Kasper Schmeichel. He turned down a move to the English Premier League and came to Celtic. There you go. He's a top-class player, so that kind of nullifies that kind of argument about coming to Scotland. This just came out now. I just got a notification. Anthony Joseph on Twitter saying that Celtic are in advanced talks with Heerenveen to loan out Gustav Lagerbielke. So that's one who's on the way out by the looks of things. So that is encouraging, I would say, because I think centre-back's an area that needs strengthened, and hopefully it's a case of one out, one in.
The great thing about that is that we still own him. So if he goes to Holland and he plays well, we can sell him. Unlike Barkas. Oh, we kind of did own Barkas at first, didn't we? But then we get screwed out of him.
As long as it's not another Jack Hendry situation where he goes and does really well and they buy him for $1 million because they had the option and then sell him for 10 in the same window. So as long as it's a straight loan, that'd be ideal.
Yeah, that'd be not too shabby either. But yeah, on the kind of moving, it's got like MLS clubs. If Celtic approach any MLS club, there's no chance that there's not interest to come to Europe. There's no chance there's not interest to play Champions League, to win titles, and then maybe springboard their career into Europe if that's what their ambition is. And again, it's kind of knowing your market. We had exploited that very well with Japan. In America, like we've done it with AJ, we might do it with Bogusz. I would like to see us do it 1 or 2 more times, because like there is just a lot of really good players there that would be buzzing to come to Celtic, and that's half the battle.
Yeah, your video in recruitment, John Tolkien, the left back, sounds like it'd be a good signing. So
aye, we Tolkien. Yeah. A guy that didn't make that video for midfield, like if we were looking at MLS back then, would be Aidan Morris, and he's went to Middlesbrough. And if you listen to Championship fans, they were like playing him down, like, who's this guy from the MLS called Aidan Morris? Like it's not even like up and coming South American or something, And he's playmaking it up. He's ripping it, and I think maybe moves like that kind of help cement the opinion of what you see, what you get from MLS, kind of thing. Because some players, like, we can look across the city. They loaned an MLS champion from New York City. I won't bring his name in vain on this show, but he was crap in Scotland for them. So you need to really be careful with, does the player fit the system? So I think that was really the problem last time. They bought a defensive mid centre back and wanted to play him somewhere else, and they realised they had, anyway, blah blah, something for another day. But Bogusz, the versatility, the quality, and like the fee. If we pay the fee, we get the guy in. Like, this will be a win of a transfer. This will be like Kyogo. Like when we bought Kyogo, he was the best striker in Japan by a long distance. He was a Japan international. He was in his mid-20s, and he hit the ground running for the most part until he'd done his shoulder, and now he's been half a guy ever since.
And what I would add on the Bogusz chat and speculation is that the journalist who broke the story of Celtic's interest is the same journalist who broke the stories of Mike Nawrocki and Josip Juranovic coming to Celtic. So it is coming from a reliable source, and it looks like it could happen.
Yeah. You brought up John Tolkien for left back there. We've been linked to Owen Wijndal as well. You know, do you think surely, like, does someone get sacked if we don't sign a left back?
They've got to, don't they? Unless they're thinking of recalling Bernabe because he's starting to play 90 minutes week in, week out. But yeah, left back's got to be.
Bernabe is cooking, man. We can sell Bernabe for a few quids now. You know, like Bernabe looks a player all of a sudden.
Good, spend it on someone. Left back has got to be a high priority between now and the end of the window. You cannot listen. Don't get me wrong. Greg Taylor's been terrific the first 3 games of the season, but you cannot rely on him to play 50, 60 games in one campaign, 90 minutes without a backup. It's insanity. There have been links, which is encouraging. The links have been good ones as well. Owen Beck and Owen Wijndal is the more exciting one, I would say. And I'd be happy if Celtic get him in the door. Hopefully they can, because, like I said, Greg Taylor being the only left back. Bernabe left in March last year, so Taylor, it was all right to do it for the last couple of months of the season, last couple of weeks. But if you're going into a new campaign, Bernabe is not due back from his loan until the middle of the campaign. Matthew Anderson is reportedly could be being loaned out to Reading in English League One. So surely Celtic have got to bring in a left back to supplement Greg Taylor.
Yeah, you've got to think so. Unless the plan is to play Hatate there when he's injured. Or something.
Maybe that explains all. Maybe that explains.
Just looking at
his links.
He has mentioned Scales as well. Could do that. I really don't think anyone wants to see that. Not even me. You know, but
Scales CSD.
Yeah, but it's just so vacant out here, isn't it? If he was to get injured and he's out the picture, like, it's just asking for trouble, isn't it? So,
yes.
I would like it to be an upgrade move, something that hopefully pushes Taylor, maybe lifts the level of the entire defence, but the very absolute bare minimum cover.
Yeah, definitely. Even if it's a 12-month loan, just bring someone in to
back Bernabe back.
Back him up. Bernabe. So Matthew Anderson develops enough to be a first team player, bring someone in his cover. Regardless, just bring a left back in.
So we're pretty consigned on O'Riley leaving. What do we think about the Kyogo before we kind of slide away from all this? We're kind of towards the end of everything. Will that happen? Is it all paper talk? Will they look at the medical and see he's got a shite shoulder and say fuck off?
Yeah, that's a fair point. What I would know is Juan Malilo, Guardiola's assistant, was Kyogo's manager at Vissel Kobe for 6 months. Oh. And I would know that he changed agent a couple of weeks ago, Kyogo. Now you change agent for one of two things. He did. So you could be looking for a move, or you're looking to get a better contract, or all this speculation could be coming from his new agent planting a seed, and maybe the interest is just not genuine, but I think it is. And if the price is right, and Celtic receive it, and Man City don't see an issue with him in that shoulder, then I think it could happen, yeah.
And then we're just crossing our fingers on some incomings to get us back to where we were, and then maybe there's some mad person out there that still thinks we'll be stronger after the window. But like I said in a video, I can't remember which one it might have been, but Brendan Rodgers, his comments will be burned at the front of every Celtic fan's brain for the next couple of days. We 100%. Will be stronger at the end of the window and judges at the end of the window, you know. So, like, we're waiting, we're watching.
Yeah, no, on the Kyogo one, it's a bit mad because when you look at all these strange transfer stories involving Celtic, you have Jota to Al Ittihad. No one thought that was going to happen. No one thought Ange Postecoglou was going to leave for Spurs somewhat. It happened. No one really even considered Kyogo leaving this time 24 hours ago. And now he could be on his way to arguably one of the best clubs in the world, Manchester City. So Celtic just seem to be getting into this habit of being caught up in all these weird and wonderful transfer situations.
Yeah, you just need to actually go now and replenish the stock. Because we all want to get excited for the Champions League. We all want to see 4 games at home. We do our best to push as close to 12 points as humanly possible. And going away from home, we're not getting pushed over or bullied or stupid red cards or stupid free kicks before half-time, going in from 50 million yards out and, you know, all that nonsense that just seems to always follow us. Shake some of that off, build a good squad, smash some teams at home, and you know, like that. This is, like I've said before, this should be the Celtic board's wet dream. We've finally got a kind of European League kind of thing on the go.
Well, so, like, Peter Law was on the committee that helped put it into fruition. So if he was on that, then he should be. I mean, I know he's a bit further off now. He's the chairman. He's not kind of CEO or a financial advisor or anything. But if he was on the committee and the board that helped bring that new Champions League vision to life, to reality, then surely he's got to be saying, well, it's going to be beneficial for Celtic, so we have to strengthen to help us go into it and actually compete in it.
Yeah, let's hope so. It'd be really interesting to catch the comment section for this one on YouTube. Let your thoughts and feelings know on what will happen throughout the remainder of the transfer window. Will we get business done? Will we be weaker by the end of the window, stronger, or anything like that? Josh, it's been an absolute pleasure. We'll be back next week to follow up on the transfer window and the St Mirren match and everything else in between. But yeah, Josh, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate.
Thank you. Hopefully this time next week we'll have some business done.
Hail, hail, everyone.